In the final seconds of Anne Boleyn's life, she kneels inside the Tower of London, blindfolded and praying in French. The sword looms near, yet she cannot see it. The executioner has crafted a cruel deception, ensuring she will never— Before Anne ascended to the throne, before her name echoed as a cautionary tale, she was simply a girl from Kent. A girl who learned music and poetry, who spoke in spaces where women were expected to remain silent. Perhaps this was the spark of her peril. History tends to remember the end before. Born around 1501 at Hever Castle, Anne entered a world where court life was a dance of power and ambition. Every smile, every marriage mattered in the quest for elevation. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, was a diplomat, while her mother, Elizabeth Howard, hailed from nobility. Alongside her sister Mary and brother George, Anne grew amidst the lessons of love and ambition, knowing that a daughter could become a bridge to influence. At a tender age, Anne was sent to the French court. France became her crucible, shaping her with polish and grace. Here she learned language, music, dance, and the art of conversation, a weapon wrapped in silk. She discovered that religion, politics, marriage, and reputation were threads woven. Returning to England, Anne was no longer a mere girl from Hever Castle. She had transformed into a creature of confidence, her dark hair and eyes setting her apart from the pale, demure ideal of court women. Her presence was sharp, and this difference bred suspicion among her enemies. Yet they could not ignore her. She did not flinch when men entered the room, responding to their words with her own. This defiance made her captivating and dangerous. Henry VIII, still married to Catherine of Aragon, saw her. Catherine, a queen with powerful connections, had one shortcoming: she had failed to bear a living son. For Henry, a son was not just lineage, he was a— Into this void stepped Anne Boleyn. She craved more than to be a fleeting desire. Her sister Mary had once been Henry's mistress, only to be cast aside when his attention waned. Anne, witnessing this humiliation, vowed never to share. This was her pivotal moment. She said no, not as a game, but with resolute clarity. For years, Anne deflected Henry's advances, refusing to be a mere pleasure. If he desired her, he would have to offer more than passion, he would have to offer a crown. And this refusal changed the course of England's history. Henry poured out his longing in letters, shedding his regal facade to reveal a man consumed by desire. Yet Anne held firm, understanding that royal affection could burn. Unable to have her as a mistress, Henry sought her as his wife. But barriers loomed: Catherine, Rome, and the Pope. The king's personal yearning ignited a public crisis. Henry sought to annul his marriage, but Rome resisted. As his desire clashed with authority, England began to sever ties with the Pope. The king's wishes morphed into law. In 1533, Henry married Anne, who was already pregnant by then. Her coronation in June dazzled London, a moment meant for triumph. Yet the city's heart remained cold. Many still loved Catherine and blamed Anne for the rift with Rome. She smiled, as queens must, but loneliness enveloped her. She had won Henry, yet England still rejected. Then came the child. On September 7, 1533, Anne gave birth. The court held its breath, anticipating a son, but Elizabeth emerged, a daughter in a world thirsting for a male heir. Henry's disappointment was palpable. Anne had given him a child, yet not the son his fears demanded. Each subsequent pregnancy brought grief, but in Henry's court, personal sorrow became public spectacle. National hopes rested on Anne's womb, and with every failure, whispers grew. In January 1536, Anne lost another child, a boy before birth, deepening Henry's fear. His gaze shifted toward Jane Seymour, a lady-in-waiting who embodied everything Anne was not. Jane's softness, quietness, and compliance stood in stark contrast to Anne's sharpness, assertiveness, and refusal to vanish. In Henry's court, such contrasts could dictate destiny. Anne sensed the walls closing in. The love that once lifted her now threatened to ensnare her. The very qualities that had drawn Henry to her were now liabilities. Her intelligence, pride, and voice became potential dangers in the eyes. Thomas Cromwell began to maneuver. Once an ally to Anne, he recognized Henry's desire for an escape. The king needed a legal narrative to justify his actions. Musicians were interrogated, courtiers watched closely, and whispers of treachery filled the air. A young musician named Mark Smeaton, under pressure, confessed to involvement with Anne. The storm escalated with darker accusations, branding her as a seductress, even implicating her brother George. These charges aimed to dismantle her defenses. paving a way for power shift. On May 2, 1536, Anne was arrested at Greenwich, taken from a tennis match to the Tower of London. Just 3 years earlier, she had graced its halls as a queen. Now it prepared her for judgment. Fear and disbelief clashed within her as she prayed, her words echoing even in grief. Her trial commenced on May 15th. Noblemen, including her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, sat in judgment. The verdict, guilty. Anne was sentenced to die, yet she did not become the monster her enemies portrayed. Instead, she grieved for the innocent men who would perish. Henry chose the sword over the axe, claiming mercy. A skilled swordsman would ensure her death was swift. She would kneel upright, almost in prayer, avoiding the indignity of the block. On May 17th, those accused with her, including George, were executed. 2 days later, Anne stepped onto Tower Green, cloaked in somber dark. Her hair concealed, she moved with measured grace. Before the gathered crowd, she spoke with calm dignity, refraining from condemning Henry or the court. Her final words in her final moments, a chilling coldness enveloped her fate. She had heard rumors of the executioner's skill and with dark humor touched her neck, remarking on its narrowness. It is a haunting detail, not for its drama, but for its humanity. A queen facing death, still striving to voice her truth. That silence lingers, heavy with unspoken truths. Why did Anne hold her tongue in those final moments? Perhaps it was for Elizabeth, her tender 2-year-old daughter, still alive in Henry's turbulent world. A mother's last words could become a heavy burden for a child. In that moment, Anne chose dignity. She chose restraint. She embraced kneeling on the cold stone floor, her eyes covered, she prayed in French. "Lord Jesus, receive my soul." The executioner, hidden from view, called out, his words echoing like a distant nightmare. As Anne turned toward the sound, the real blade moved silently behind her, a fate she never saw coming. In one swift moment, Anne Boleyn was gone. No grand coffin awaited her. Her loyal ladies tenderly cared for her remains, placing her in an old arrow chest, a makeshift burial. Deep beneath the Chapel Royal of St. Peter ad Vincula, she was laid. Just 11 days later, Henry wed Jane Seymour, ushering in a new chapter. The ones who had orchestrated Anne's downfall controlled her narrative, branding her guilty. They twisted her sharp intelligence into ambition, her uniqueness into suspicion, her defiance into sin. Yet history is seldom obedient. Time marched on, and the little girl who was once with a resolute step, she claimed the throne her father had sought for a son. Elizabeth ruled for 45 years, etching her name among the most revered monarchs in English history. With her ascendance, Anne's legacy endured. A story whispers of a small ring Elizabeth wore, concealing a hidden portrait. After her death, it was revealed to hold the likeness of her mother. Whether truth, symbol, or memory, its significance resonates. The daughter kept the mother close. Anne Boleyn's tale transcends crowns, trials, and swords. It speaks of a woman who learned to find her voice in a world that demanded silence. A woman who refused to be disposable, soaring too high in a court, enamored with obedience over truth. Her final silence may have shielded the child destined to become her living legacy. History often reduces lives to simple labels, but each human story is far more expansive. Anne lost her crown, her trial, and ultimately her life. Yet she did not vanish. Her spirit lived on in Elizabeth, who carried her story forward. Nearly 5 centuries later, the question remains, who was Anne Boleyn? Perhaps there lies a lesson within her legacy. Power may command a room, dictate a trial, and alter the final image of a life, but it cannot always govern memory. Sometimes the quietest legacies endure the longest. What do you believe was Anne Boleyn's greatest strength? Her courage, her intelligence, or her love for Elizabeth? Reflect on her